special guest this evening is Matt.
Matt is a great resource, very knowledgeable when it comes to POTA.
Over to you.
Well, good heavens. That's a heck of an introduction, and you saved yourself about 3 slides. So well done. Well done. Thanks, everybody, for joining us this evening. It's a real honor to be invited back. I guess I didn't mess up too badly the first time. That's always good to know. And Ed's right. I am just this side of being a maniac when it comes to the POTA stuff. I've gotten myself onto the POTA team. I work with the developers. I work on some of the help desk stuff. I work on the video training content, all kinds of stuff. And I do that entirely and completely because I really believe that POTA is one of the best things to happen to ham radio in a long, long time. As was pointed out, POTA got started back in about 2017, early, mid, depends on who you talk to, by a group of folks who had a great time doing national parks on the air and were very sorry to see it go. It was one of the more successful things the ARRL has done in a number of years, and it was really sad to see it come to an end. So they spun up this Parks on the Air program with really one primary goal, and that is to have fun. If anybody says, why in the world would you do Parks on the Air? The answer to that question is because it's fun. Yes, ham radio has an emergency preparedness aspect to it and a civil service aspect to it and learning aspects, and all of those are wonderful things. But in the end, most of the time, ham radio is a hobby, and hobbies are supposed to be entertaining. Well, POTA is most definitely entertaining. I have a couple of parks that have thousands of contacts. I just got my award for hunting my 2000th unique park, and it never gets old. The activators are always glad to hear from you, no matter how many times they've done it. Being on what I call the right side of the pileup never gets old. If your only exposure to operating in a sort of a zoo when ham radio is real busy is field day, you've gotten a small sliver of how good it really could be. And I think POTA is really the best way to experience that. Unfortunately, it's easy. It's not that difficult to get involved in Parks on the Air. Quite frankly, some of you have probably done it and don't even know you did it. If you were spinning the VFO and you heard someone calling CQ and you answered them back, and they gave you some bizarre number that you didn't understand, you probably just worked a POTA activator. So you've participated with no training and no sign up and nothing to log and nothing to submit. Being a hunter is no more complicated than operating in your shack the way you do all of the time. And then when you are ready to go out and activate, that does not have to be terribly complicated either. There are those of us who take some perverse joy in making everything as difficult as it could possibly be. But normal people frequently will make just use of what they have. There's a large number of activators who go out and work POTA parks using a mobile rig. Their portable setup is they drove to the park. It doesn't really have to be any more complicated than that. And then the bonus that applies to everybody, I have the luxury of living kind of out in the country, a couple of acres, not a whole lot of RFI. I'm one of those people who doesn't understand why they say verticals are noisy, because mine's not. Having said that, the conditions are still almost always better when I get to the park. The last activation I did, I had the preamp turned on 40 meters because the noise floor was S0. There was nothing. There was no noise in the park at all. It was a beautiful thing. And of course, the surroundings are beautiful too. I like looking at my shack. I think I did a great job building it and organizing it and whatever, but let's be honest, it's LEDs with a beige wall behind it. The scenery at the park is decidedly better. And then the fourth thing I'll try and entice you with is the award system. Now, I understand that not everybody is a paper chaser, and that's okay. POTA provides a very rich award system. There's lots and lots and lots of ways to track your progress, but the only person you can compete against is yourself. POTA is not a contest. Contests have start times and end times and fixed exchanges, and when it's over, somebody wins. None of that is true of POTA. There's a little bit of friendly co-opetition that goes on, particularly within the local club. Whose POTA stats are what is a great topic of conversation on the repeater. But you will find as you get out there that every single person in the POTA program is ready, willing, and able to help you, because in the end, our goal is for everybody to unlock all of the achievements. And if someday we have the problem of all of the awards have been given to everybody, well, that'll be fine and dandy. That'll be just a great challenge to come up with the next litmus test. Okay, let me back up just a half a second here. I've been throwing some POTA terms around like everybody knows them. Fortunately, there aren't a whole lot. There are there's two people mostly involved in a QSO. And those two people are going to be in two different places. The activator is what we call the person who's in the park. So they've got whatever their portable setup is, whether it's the mobile rig in their car, or it's a backpack thing, or it's a Go box, or however they get their radio to the park, they're in the park. And that really is the only hard and fast rule for activators, is that you must be in the park. If there is a hard part of activating POTA, it's figuring out where the boundaries of the park are. Provide as much guidance on that as we can, but the reality is, depending on whether it's a state park or a federal park or part of the trail system, it can be daunting to find the official boundaries of the park. So, but that and you're going to have to submit logs is pretty much the only thing you need to know to be an activator. And as we've discussed earlier, being a hunter is even simpler. You can be anywhere. You can be running your rig over a remote connection. You can be at home. You could be mobile. You could also be in a park and just decide, I'm just going to hunt today. It does not really matter where you are. And the rules are pretty simple too. For a hunter, I don't want to say there aren't any rules, because obviously there are rules, but there aren't any POTA specific rules. There's nothing that you have to do for POTA that's unique to POTA. You obviously have to follow Part 97, nothing illegal, and it is part of the posted POTA rules that, officially the terms and conditions for your POTA account, that you will follow the DX Code of Conduct. If you haven't read that, it's a short, but it's a very good read. 10 or 11 bullet points that are, quite honestly, things that anybody with any common sense could probably figure out. Like, please don't tune up your kilowatt Viking 2 in the middle of the pileup. Real complicated stuff like that. That all pretty much boils down to the golden rule. Don't do things to other people that you really wouldn't appreciate having done to you. For the activators, there's a couple of things. Activators do have to have a POTA account. I guess I didn't mention it explicitly, but you could, in theory, hunt POTA without even bothering to create a POTA account. It makes it a little difficult to track your stats, but it's possible. Not so for the activators. They're going to have an account, really only because they're going to have to submit logs. And we have some training material on what needs to go into your logs. They're real simple. We tried to keep it as basic as possible. But as long as you and your stuff were in the park and you get your logs right, you're pretty much good to go as an activator. We have all this stuff documented online. The parksontheair.com domain is the original sort of POTA domain, and it's still there and it's not going anywhere. And it's where all of the training material is posted under help and getting started. And it's where the rules are. Everything else has been migrated over to the new POTA.app site. And do note that that's still a website. So even if you're on a mobile device, you're going to go there in Safari or Chrome or whatever browser you happen to use to the web address POTA.app. If you're in the Google Play Store or the Apple App Store and you're looking for the POTA app, I'd like to say you won't find it. It's worse than that. You will find some stuff labeled POTA apps, none of which come from the POTA team, none of which are sanctioned. If you have one of those, quite honestly, what we ask is that you delete it, because it was done without anyone's knowledge or blessing. The website is a mobile-first design. It works great pretty much everywhere, and that's where the spotting page is, and we'll talk about what's there a little bit. But POTA.app is actually probably your starting point for the official POTA resources. There are two other resources online that are not managed by the POTA staff that are social networking type communities. We have a group on Slack, and the group on Slack is where most of the business of POTA takes place. That's where you'll find the developers. That's where you'll find the discussion of what should or shouldn't be on the website. There's a help channel in there. There's all kinds of administrivia type stuff, as well as a couple of good discussions and the POTA swap meet. If you're interested in used POTA gear, all that stuff is on Slack. There is also a Facebook group. And I will say this, usually anytime you talk about Facebook, you can feel the eyes rolling in the crowd. And more sympathetic I could not be. The POTA Facebook is sort of the rose amongst the thorns, as it were. There's a lot of people in there, and yeah, you bring up antennas, and it's a bunch of hams. You ask 5 people, you get 9 answers. You do have those discussions, but by and large, the POTA Facebook group is a wonderful place. It's the kind of thing that makes you go, gosh, if all of Facebook was like this, maybe it would be okay. So I would encourage, just like we encourage new hams to join ham radio clubs for elmering and mentoring and just general inspiration, I would encourage you to venture into the waters of the POTA communities, just getting started, because there's a lot of just good energy there. All right, day in the life of a POTA activator is pretty straightforward. You're generally going to start out by going to the POTA.app website and looking at the map. And the map has all these yellow dots over it that show you where the parks are that are part of the POTA system. Now, people ask all the time, do I have to go to where the yellow dot is? Absolutely not. If you go to Yellowstone, there's one yellow dot somewhere in the middle of Yellowstone. You can go anywhere in Yellowstone. The Appalachian Trail is a POTA park. It spans 13 states. You certainly do not have to go to where the dot is. But for mapping purposes, it gives you sort of a general idea of what is probably somewhere near where you are. Once you've picked the park you want to go to, we encourage people to go to the scheduling page and list their activation, as this will happen in the future. This is not an absolute requirement. You can be driving past a park and go, hey, look, a park, and pull in and activate, no problem. But having an activation on the schedule gives you a couple of additional capabilities that I'll talk about here in a minute when it comes to spotting, and it helps people to plan, because not everybody can spend every waking minute in their shack. There are folks who have to juggle when they're going to do the laundry, cut the grass, and play radio. And being able to have a schedule of when people plan to activate, lets them arrange their priorities. So we encourage it, even though it's not totally required. You're going to pack up your stuff after having tested it at home and hopefully making a checklist of the stuff you want to bring, and take your station to the park and set it up. Now, to me, this is, it's hard for me to say what's the most fun part of POTA, but you'll hear me say more than once in this presentation, we're hams and we like to play with our toys, and I'm no exception. I really enjoy the process of whittling my POTA station down to the bare essentials and the best way to pack it and the fastest way to set it up and tear it down, but also still the most effective station I can have when I get there, within the confines of, we have to be considerate of the fact that we're using public space. Among its other many wonderful redeeming qualities, has proven to be a great ambassadorship for ham radio. More than half of my activations, more than half of my activations when the weather's okay. When I go out in the snow, I generally get to sit there by myself. But as the weather gets nice, more and more people are going to come up to me and say, what are you doing? And it gives me a chance to explain to them that ham radio has not, in fact, gone the way of the dodo bird. And it's not all, as my buddy in New Zealand would, pensioners in their basement. It's a vibrant thing that people actually go out and do. And it's a wonderful chance to make a good impression on the public. as long as your station isn't taking up like an entire pavilion that a family wanted to use, or, you know, somebody's kid just tripped over your radials, or you get where I'm going with this. You got to mind the fact that not everybody's a ham, and the kind of stuff that you see, like when a club goes out and does field day, is probably not going to garner anything but same kind of looks the teenagers with the loud stereos get when they go through the park. So we follow the hiker's creed of leave no trace, and we try to be sort of minimal footprint. While once you get set up, you're going to get yourself on the spotting page, hopefully. That's going to require that you either have cellular internet service, or that you put your activation on the schedule and know how to use CW to get yourself onto the spotting page via the Beacon network. Or there is a burgeoning thing where, and it is sort of a Rube Goldberg machine here, but you can use JS call to send a message that ends up in an APRS gateway that ultimately gets you on the spotting page. That's going to be like a whole training video topic on itself. So I'm not going to go into a lot of detail here, but the point is you get on the spotting page, because as soon as you get on the spotting page, you are going to be on what I call the right side of the pileup. If you build it, they will come. And boy, will they come. The last activation, I was out there for 22 minutes. I was on my lunch hour, and it took me, time to get to the park, set up, whatever. I was left with ish minutes to activate. I came home with 68 contacts in the log, and that's on 20 meters. They will come if you get on that spotting page. So you rack up your contacts, you QSO until you can't feel your throat anymore, or you have to go home because it's getting dark or whatever. And then you pack up your logs and send them into the program. Right now, that's a real simple email thing. And in the future, it's going to be an even simpler web upload. We're this close to self-service log uploads. And then you just sit back and wait for the awards to roll in. This is out of date now. That's Western Prairie Fringed Orchid. Jason Johnson is our program administrator, and his wife came up with the theme for all of the POTA achievements and did all the design work. She did an excellent job, but she has a passion for endangered plant species. So if you wondered where the names of these things come from, that's where it is. Happy wife, happy life. So we get endangered species. It's all good. How do you get those QSOs? Well, POTA is pretty generous when it comes to a QSO. Any unique combination of the big five. So obviously, if it's a new day, or you work a new call sign, or you change band or mode, or you go to a new park, change any one of those things, and you have a new QSO. The thing that's a little bit unique about POTA is that, yes, obviously we recognize what you think of as different modes, the contest modes of phone, CW, and digital. But as it turns out, POTA really will allow any change of mode to count as a new QSO. So whereas in a typical contest, AM, FM, and sideband would all just be considered phone, well, in POTA, those are three separate modes. Because again, not a contest. Our goal is for people to have fun and to get out there and to try stuff and experiment with it. And it just makes no sense to put some position where they want to try AM. They've been running all sideband, and they go, hey, you know what? I've never even pushed the AM button on this radio. Let me see what happens. Only disappointed because they work for the same people that they worked sideband. Like, no, we'll count them. If you can, anybody who thinks it's the same working AM and sideband hasn't tried it. And the same for the digital modes. POTA counts all these digital modes as different modes, as different QSOs. And again, I would put it out there if anybody who's under the impression that, well, that's not really fair. You could just sit there and drill through them and rack up a bunch of QSOs with the same guy. Good luck. It's harder than you might think. It's at least as hard as turning your VFO from 20 to 40 meters. So there's that. I've talked a lot about activators, And I do that only because there's sort of more things to talk about. Being a hunter is so simple that it doesn't really require a lot of explanation. But I certainly don't want to short the hunter role in any way, shape, or form. The vast majority of the people in the POTA program are hunters. Almost everybody in the program hunts at least some. And the vast majority of people only hunt. It's a very important role. The program doesn't work without hunters. No, if you can imagine, you put in all the effort to go out to a park and you set up and you call CQ and you get crickets. That's a bad day. So we would encourage all of you, pull up the spotting page. Just go to POTA.app, pull up the spotting page, see who's out there, spin the VFO, and drop your call sign on them. That's all it takes to get started. And I'm relatively confident that if you do that a couple of times, you start to meet some of the people in the program. It kind of sells itself. So anyway, that spotting page is at POTA.app, along with where do I go to get signed up? Where's the frequently asked questions document, the map? Pretty much everything is available at POTA.app. If you need to be redirected over to the Parks on the Air website, or the POTA.app thing, will send you there. And then, of course, the social communities are available for folks who just want to meet some like-minded or nice people. So with that, we're just past the top of the hour here. I want to take a question break. I saw some chat stuff coming in here, and of course, the size of the various windows and stuff, I can't actually see it. So I don't know, Ed, if you want to do a little moderating here, and let's see if there's any questions out there that we need to answer before I get into part 2 of the spiel, is talking about the toys, talking about portable stations. So this is a good break to talk about POTA, the program.
Yeah, perfect, Matt. So let me pick it up here. So yes, I did see some notes, but let's sort of pick it up here for a couple of minutes. Are there any questions or comments for Matt? Let's start open. Yeah, just
WI2W.
Sure, Steve, go ahead.
Hi, good evening, Matt. Thanks for coming by tonight.
Happy to do it.
Question is, I worked a satellite station and noticed that they logged me. I was on satellite, they were on satellite, and they logged me with the downlink frequency as, in this case, an FM contact. But is there, or are there plans to make satellite a mode or give it some unique way to be logged? I really wouldn't know how to log it myself.
Yeah, so as a POTA activator, typically people will log the uplink frequency if they're the activator. Hunters don't have to log anything, so it doesn't really matter what they decide to do. But the general consensus is that the frequency you were transmitting on is the more sort of important frequency, as it were. There are a couple of changes. It's connected with some spotting changes and some changes to the way we deal with things like club call signs, where there could be more than one frequency involved. It's all sort of wrapped up together. And it's a conversation, but because there's so many things connected, I can't really give you a timeline on it.
Okay, thanks. It would be nice to have some satellite awards for activating different satellites.
Yeah, at the moment, satellites already have a little bit of an elevated place in the program because they're the only repeater of any kind at all that is authorized for POTA contacts. You can't use any terrestrial repeater of any kind, like including DMR hotspots or anything like that, to make a POTA contact. Satellites are the only exception to the repeater rule. So
okay, thanks, Matt. Appreciate it.
They get a little love, but yeah, I agree with you. It could be some more.
Perfect. Thanks, Steve. Other questions? I see Steve K2YRA on my screen.
Hey, Matt, thank you. Outstanding. You did mention that POTA is not a contest. So occasionally when I'm on like 12 or 17, the WARC modes, you get noise from people. Hey, you guys are not allowed to, above and beyond the unfortunate increase in jamming and interference with POTA on the air. We're getting some noise from folks on the WARC bands that, hey, you guys are not allowed to operate on this.
Yeah, well, they're wrong. And, you know, what can I tell you? There's lots of people who are wrong about lots of stuff, and nobody ever likes being told that they're wrong. The best you can do is tell them, look, POTA is not a contest. It doesn't share any aspects of a contest, but on the air is not the place really to have that debate. You can mention it once, but then you kind of just gotta go on with your day.
Good. Thanks, Steve. I see two comments in the chat, one from Berlot, KD2MYF, and this may be more directed to our group. Okay. And her question is this an activity that can be done with a club? And obviously, perhaps Steve or Noel can pick up just maybe for a minute or two about what we're doing, just to brief everybody else. So let me turn it over to you guys.
Good evening, everyone. Yeah, definitely. We've actually, a presentation I did on Parks on the Air about a year and a half ago, and Matt was there to help us out with questions and stuff, which you greatly appreciated that, Matt. Because of that, the results were basically, we started through Groups.io and Slack. We have a special interest group within FLARC, which is the Portable Ops Special Interest Group. And basically, you know, because of that, we got many people interested in operating portable in general, but for the most part, Parks on the Air. And so, yeah, so within that first year, we did at least 3 or 4 group activations. We went out there and did activated multiple parks simultaneously, and then kind of gathered at one park and just hung out and socialized and had a good time. So yeah, definitely a club event, interacting with each other. And at this point in time, thanks to Nomar and Ed, we now have an actual call sign for our special interest group, which we've yet to use, but hopefully that will be helping us down the road, and so it should be fun.
Yeah, Berlot, if I can, why I pull this offline is that why don't you reach out to Noel, W2MSA, or Steve, KA2YRA directly, okay, and they can certainly pull you in terms of the special interest groups. I see 2 other quick questions here in the chat.
Sure. Okay, before we get to that, I wanted to mention one of the local clubs I'm in. Club call is Whiskey 3 Alpha Alpha Alpha. POTA has been a godsend to this club. Now, POTA got an almost unfair advantage because it was the first thing we were able to get together and do post-pandemic. So I think people probably would have come out to clean a latrine at that point. They were so desperate to get together. But it has just been wonderful to be able to get together sort of impromptu, without the overhead of field day. Because what people want to do is they want to operate. We're ham radio operators because we want to play radio. And so a POTA is a great way to do that, without it being a 48-hour sleep deprivation exercise and requiring a diesel generator. It grew to the point where 2 of us rented a cabin for the weekend at a local state park over winter field day. And let me stress the winter part of winter field day. We had 2 feet of snow and single-digit temps. It was great. Radials work well on the snow, though, in case you were wondering. But and even under those conditions, the whole event went so well. We had a couple of 2 or 3 dozen club members stop by at various points, operate. We made hundreds of well north of 500 contacts with only one station actually running at any given time. And we are going to do the same thing again this summer. But what we decided was, honestly, the field day part of it kind of ruined it. We would really just kind of like to do POTA. So we're not going to do the summer event on summer field day. We're going to make it its own thing so that we just don't have to deal with the mess of field day on the air when we're trying to POTA.
So I've got 2 quick questions here, okay, and then we'll turn it over to part 2. We have a question from Sudipta in India, and I'll defer to him due to the time change. His question here is, has anyone here used UBITX or USDX for portable operation? If yes, kindly give your opinion.
I have the original. I have the UBITX 40, and I have the new one. I've used them both out in the field. They work. QRP will motivate you to learn CW. QRP works. QRP sideband works. Doesn't work nearly as well as QRP CW. But if that's what you have access to, and I will say it's going to be harder to make contacts if your options are QRP sideband, but contacts that you get QRP sideband on a rig that you built, they're gold. They're absolute gold. 3 of them are worth 300 of, fire up the 100-watt store-bought rig.
Perfect. Thank you. Gene WO2W has a question. Gene, over to you.
Yeah. Good evening, and I enjoy your presentation. I have a question, and I don't know if I missed it or what, but I'm just getting into POTA as an activator. Okay, but I only do sideband. Unfortunately, I don't do CW. Now, you said okay. You have to, once you go onto POTA.app, you register, you log in your activation. Correct. You enter your date, your time, whatever. I saw that.
On the scheduler, which is optional, but we encourage it. Yeah.
Correct. And if I know I'm planning ahead of time, I can do that. Right. But then you said you have to go over to the activator part, which is only done by CW.
No. There is an option if you don't have cell service when you get to the park.
Okay.
There are some backup ways to get yourself onto the spotting page.
I'm going to be strictly with cell service. I'm not.
Yeah, then none of it matters. What you're going to do is go to POTA.app on your phone and put yourself on the spotting page using the cell phone.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Perfect.
Sure.
One last question, and then back to you for part 2. Let's turn it over to Gordon W2TTT.
Yeah, Matt, thank you for doing this. 2 quick questions, I guess. One is, can we use FT8? And the other is, can we, is there a statistical, or at least a utilization of parks, kind of like scoreboard, so you know how many activations, when there was last activated, how many queues happened there, that kind of stuff? Because I live within 15 minutes of 2 or 3 parks, which is lovely, by the way.
Yeah.
State parks in every case. It's wonderful.
Yeah. Isn't that nice? I'm spoiled too. I got, well, they just added the state game lands. So there's 3 or 4 activator spots within 15, maybe 20 minutes of me. It's
Pennsylvania. Yeah.
Yeah. It's nice. Okay. So those are both easy, fortunately. Yes. As long as what you want to do is legal, it's probably okay for POTA. Is what it boils down to. Okay. There's no fixed exchange for POTA. And in fact, a lot of the activators who use FT8, FT4, they just take their rig to the park and they set up and they just work people. They don't call CQ, POTA. They don't necessarily do anything POTA specific. They just work people and log them. And because they did it from the park, that becomes their activator log. You are certainly welcome to spot yourself on the POTA page and to, use the text field and change your CQ to CQ POTA and do it, POTA it up. You don't have to. A QSO is a QSO as long as it happened from the park. Perfect. Park stats are available. If you go to the POTA.app website and you look at the map, any park you click on will bring up a detail page that'll show you total number of QSOs, how many times has it been activated, who did it last, who did it first, all of that stuff. Now, there's not like a dashboard that would let you look at it at a level any higher than 1 park. You have to sort of check the parks you're interested in one at a time. But it is. I
guess sometimes some parks get over milked.
Well, yes and no. I mean, we have a whole bunch of achievements: the repeat offender and the kilo, and the Fox Den thing. There's lots of motivation to go back to the same park over and over and over again for both activators and hunters. That's on purpose because there are a whole lot of people who are in a situation where they're lucky to have a park available to them. Mm-hmm. Or one of my best friends in the local club here. Yeah, we have a whole bunch of parks in the local area, but his situation at home is such that he's on the clock. He's got a time when he can leave and a time when he has to be home at that minute. And so he goes to exactly the same spot every time because he knows exactly how long it's going to take him, kind of thing. We want the program to be as open and accepting as possible of whatever your situation happens to be. So we've tried to make it so there's not necessarily a whole lot of incentive to go work a park that's never been worked before versus one that is the most popular park in the system.
Okay, thank you.
Having said that, if you do want to be wildly popular as an activator, go to Hawaii.
There you go. Anyway, so Matt, let's turn it over to part 2 if we can.